Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada, streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Float, Odyssey, Telegram, and Twitch. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim, and today is August 27th, 2022, and this is episode 159 of the Workshop Podcast. Kind of a different time here. We'll hop into that and I'll let you know all about that here right away. Get the announcements out of the way. Number one, thank you guys so far for the support that the Patch of the Month Club has garnered. It means a ton to me. The first patches will be going out the first week of September. I'm rather excited. I actually had to order some more because you guys blew me out of the water with how many people signed up so far. So if you want a way to support the workshop community, patchofthemonth.co, run by there. $10 a month or $100 for the year. You get a really cool patch, and I can almost promise you I'll throw in some cool extras once in a while. All right, number two, this is the Thursday episode, guys, which means it's also on the Prepper Broadcast Network. So if you haven't gone by and shown them some of the workshop love, please do. It's incredible the amount of views that I get over there and the community that I've built. I'm actually going to get to meet most of the people. Sorry, I said built. The community that I have been allowed to join into. Sorry, just absolutely great. I love those guys over there. I'm going to get to meet them in person at Prepper Camp. So if you haven't taken the time to go by there, add them to your podcatcher. They're on Fountain now, so you can check out the clips that James has been throwing up there. It's just absolutely awesome. Those guys are incredible. They support me so much, and I thank them for everything. So go by and do that. And number three, change of schedule. So you're probably wondering, hey, Tim, you're on live a different time than normal. Well, yeah, but you guys are here, so you knew about it. I tried to share it on social media, but we are going away for a quick little 3-day vacation with the kids, and I wanted to get my episode in before we went. So I figured it was either pre-recorded on Thursday or get up early. Well, not early, but get online early and share it with you guys. So I always enjoy the different times. So here we are. Saturday, there'll be no live stream, but if you're listening to this in the podcast feed, you'll get the second half of the John Willis episode, which was just straight up fire. Love that episode. But then Sunday, back to regular scheduled programming. I got Joel from Fortress K9 coming on. We're going to make a second go at this and get him on here and chat about protection dogs and just dogs in general. And one more quick thing, guys. Just before I went live, the Renegade Butcher, Josh, if you guys know him from Liberty Meat Solutions, sent me a link. And he said, hey, Tim, just built this for you. So I got to shout him out. So if you guys want a way to tip using Lightning, to tip the workshop in general, go to, you ready for this? Itty Bitty Tips. So not what you thought I said, ittybitty.tips/Toolman. Got to check it out. I haven't even had a full chance to go through the whole thing, but anything Josh sends me or builds, it's top quality. So run by, check that out, and try it. So yeah, and hit up Josh. I'm sure you could hire him to build some of this stuff because he is rather handy. But it was a huge surprise, and I wanted to share it with you guys. Okay, so today we are going to do, it'd been a little while since we did a Q&A episode, so I figured it was time to get down to business and answer a bunch of questions. I had a ton of emails. Wow, I say a ton. I had probably a good half dozen emails that required an in-depth answer that I wanted to send back to people, and I wasn't ignoring them. So I thought, what better way to make sure I get these questions answered than to take the time and put them together in a show and then send the responses back to the senders. So here we are. Now, the first one is not an email. This was a topic that was broached in the Telegram group the other day. Brian Young, if you guys don't know him, I finally got to meet him in person at LFTN Workshop. It was great. And he suffers from one of the same issues that a lot of us suffer from. So he said, how does everyone manage and prioritize personal projects? Because personally, I'm all over the place. The polymath in me wants to do and learn all the things. I have drone projects, 3D printing projects, ham radio projects, gardening projects, in addition to the regular clutter management, chores, and maintenance projects. So how many of you guys all of a sudden relate to that when you hear that, because to me, that just resonates with everything that I am. Now, first off, I wanted to touch on what in the world is a polymath. If you haven't heard that term before, it's okay. I hadn't heard that term about 3 years ago. What it is, it's a person of wide-ranging knowledge or learning. Sometimes it's called a modern Renaissance man. There are, in our group, the thing that I love is that there's so many polymaths or modern Renaissance people, men or women, in there. And it's because we all just seem to be really hungry for knowledge. The downside to being really hungry for knowledge is sometimes we don't know where to go. You know, you're like a cat chasing its tail, or a dog chasing its tail, or you know, a little squirrel running around looking for nuts. Just anytime you're heading somewhere, you just feel like you should be doing something else, because you're always interested, always wanting to know the next thing. For me, I describe it as an itch in my brain. So there's always this itch that just needs to be scratched. And it's almost like a compulsion that I need to learn something new. And for many, many, many years, I honestly thought there was something wrong with me. All through high school, every time I'd have a hobby or something I was interested in, I would go balls to the wall, learn everything I could about it, and then drop it like a bad habit. And I would do that over and over and over again. And I could probably make a list of 15 hobbies I got into over 2 or 3 years. And it just happened. And I always thought, why is this? Why am I like that? It felt like I was letting myself down or wasting my energy. But it just turns out that there's a lot of people out there who that is exactly how they learn. They just have to go all in on Ted says they make pharmaceuticals for that. Yes, they do. But then maybe my brain wouldn't work the way it should. Thomas Jefferson was a very famous polymath. So I wanted to share with you, first off, something that helped me a ton with this concept, because it's never something you fix, but it is something you can learn how to deal with. So the first thing I got to do, you guys know that I wouldn't be doing any of this if it wasn't for Jack Spirko over at TSP and Nicole at LFTN. But if you want a good episode to listen to on this topic, check out the Survival Podcast, episode 2389. That was in February of 2019. I remember right where I was working the day that I listened to that episode. And it was actually in this house prepping to move into it. And it felt like therapy to me to hear somebody talk about the concept of learning all kinds of things and then moving on to the next thing and then moving on to the next thing and realizing, hey, that's totally fine. And it is. But there's lots of caveats attached to that, right? In the last couple of years, there were things I did, 3D printing, Kratky bins, started collecting VHS tapes, homebrewing, things I've done all over the years. And I just, I got into them and then I got out of them. So a few things that have kind of helped me. First off is embrace it. Okay. Don't tell yourself there's something wrong with you. And I'm sure all of us know we're all at this age where we know we are who we are. But embrace it. Know that this is who you are. This is how you learn. This is how you interact with all your hobbies and your interests and your desires, all of that. Okay. So once you know that is what you are, then you got to look at it. For me, so what I did was I realized that most of my interests, my jobs, my hobbies, whatever they were, I wasn't dropping them. I was treating them more like a spiral. Okay. So here's the thing. And I'm going to try not to get too hoity-toity or esoteric here, but these at the Calgary airport, when you go up the different levels for parking, it's a very tight spiral like this, and you just go around and around and around, and you get dizzy. So what I found for me was with my hobbies or my interests, like homebrewing, for instance, I'd get interested down here at the bottom and I would learn everything I could about it, and then I would drop it. But it's always back there in the back of my brain. And then I would start going around, and eventually I would circle back to the topic, but it would be at a higher level. And it might take a month, it might take a year, it might take a damn decade. But eventually I come back to it because my brain needs that itch scratched again. And that's okay. So you get back to it. You're like, okay, now I'm going to dive in again and learn things again. And that's how I realized I wasn't necessarily dropping some of these things. I was just learning them at one level and then spending some time on something else, circling back to it a while later, and that was totally fine. So I had to embrace the fact that I wasn't failing. I was just moving on to something else and then moving up to another level. Now, what helps me to deal with this? The biggest thing for me, and you guys have heard me talk about this a ton. Hunter said he's back. His boss showed up. Excuse me, guys. The biggest thing that I found that helped me was setting yearly goals. So the big thing for me, you've heard me talk many times, don't set New Year's resolutions, set New Year's goals, set yearly goals. That way you don't feel like a failure if you don't accomplish them right away. But what they help me do is whenever I have that downtime and I think I need to fill it with something, I go back to my goals, I look at them and I say, okay, this is what I'm going to work on right now. And it helps. It always gives me a goal or kind of a lineup of things that I know I can work on so that I don't fill them in with some random crap that isn't important to me right now. Now I may be like, oh, look, there's a squirrel. I want to run off here and try this. But those yearly goals always keep me grounded and bring me back to the things I know are the most important. And if I want to live the life I want to live, some of these other things need to get the hell out and then work on it. Now, here's the other thing. For me, I've embraced knowing certain times of the year when I can get distracted. So in the summertime, I don't have time for all of these squirrel projects as much as I would love to. I just have too many other things to get done. Important projects around the house, around the daycare, and a whole bunch of jobs for customers. So I have embraced the fact that I typically have a much slower winter, and I allow myself to go down all these different rabbit holes in the late fall and throughout the winter. You know, I've got a wood stove I want to redo. Well, that is set all summer long. It's going to get done in the fall or maybe early winter. Just simple as that. I want to upgrade my solar system. Well, I don't have time to do that right now. I want to build a battery pack. I don't have time to do that right now. So I have to know that in the summertime, I just can't get that stuff done. So when I get an itch to do something, I just need to learn how to do something new. The best thing I found for me right now is to write it down and say, okay, this is when I'm going to find time to do you. But before that, I just have to embrace that I can't get everything done. You have to accept it because we want to get everything done. And it's a compulsion to do all the things, learn all the things, try all the things, build all the hobbies. But when it comes down to it, you got to embrace the fact that we'll never get everything done. That's okay. Don't beat yourself up. Don't spend more money on the hobbies that you know you may not stick with. This was a tough one for me. One year I get into sewing and I bought a sewing machine, but I didn't just buy a sewing machine. I bought all the stuff, all the gear for everything. And I learned it, but then it sat there. I didn't need to spend all the money on all the stuff to make sure my sewing machine could run for the next 20 years. I just didn't have to do it. 3D printing. I thought, okay, I'm going to 3D print and I'm going to learn everything there is to know about 3D printing. Well, you know what? I bought the 3D printer. I bought the upgrade kits. I bought everything under the sun. And I realized I didn't like 3D printing. I didn't have the time or the patience for it. And the return on investment for me wasn't worth it. So I sold it to a good buddy at a good deal. He got a good deal on it, but I made a decent amount of money back off it. So two things. Don't spend more money on your hobbies or these passing interests than you necessarily have to. But if you are going to buy something, if you need to invest in something for whatever that latest topic or hobby is, then make sure you buy something that you can resell, even when you decide, hey, this isn't for me. But here's the thing. I don't always have this under control, not even close. And I get asked this all the time. And I hope some of these suggestions help. But when it comes down to it, there's just times when, for me, I find it's when I'm the busiest. When I'm run right off my feet and stressed out, that's when I have the biggest desire to just run off and work on something random. And I'm sure that's part of a coping mechanism to handle really stressful, really busy times. But it's also just my personality and my hardwiring of my brain. And it's not something that I can change, and that's okay. So embrace the fact that there's going to be days when you're going to run off and do something, even though you have other things you need to do. You just got to go and do that for whatever reason, and that is okay. But don't live over there. Give yourself a little bit of time, deal with it, Scratch that itch for a minute and then move on. Gunner says, so buy more guitars? Got it. Now to sell the idea to the wife. Why do you guys always insist on getting me in trouble with your significant others? I didn't say buy more guitars. I didn't say quit your job. I didn't say, go buy a VW microbus and live like a hippie. Doesn't matter. I'm just kidding. But I get it. So I hope that helped a little bit. I kind of ran all the way around the topic, like a spiral, I guess. But when it comes down to it, it's just one of those things that you have to embrace. You have to know that that is who you are. There's nothing wrong with who you are. And then try to figure out the coping mechanisms you can. Make time for those random projects you want to learn, but put them on paper, shelve them for later, and then embrace the fact that you're not going to get everything done. That has been my biggest struggle, is I have to get it done, but I just can't all the time. And that is okay. Move it to next year, but prioritize. Look at the things that have to get done. Look at the things that need to get done due to the weather. Embrace those, get those done, then fit all those other small little things into your schedule from there. All right, so this is the next one. This was a great question. I love it. It's about tools, so can you imagine? This is from Joe over on MeWe. He sent it to me. He said, howdy, Tim. If questions like this are annoying, please feel free to ignore me. We're going to handle that in a second. I'm struggling choosing your cordless tool line. My fear is battery tech changing and making my tools obsolete. Do the big brands ever screw customers over like that? For that reason, I've been looking at Ryobi, who promises to never change their battery design, but I'm worried Ryobi won't be beefy enough for my needs, building sheds, homeowner stuff, etc. Okay, so first off, I need you to know, any email, any social media question, anything you ever send me is never, ever, ever, ever annoying. I promise. Okay. This is why I do what I do. I do it because I love teaching. I love sharing. I love learning. I love building this community, and I'm always here for you. So don't anybody out there, don't ever feel like you're putting me back or wasting my time by sending me a question. Now, if I always have the intentions of answering, so let me put it right there. But sometimes I will miss them, or I will have an email and I'll be like, yes, I got to respond to that. And then I'll be like, oh, a squirrel. And then I forget to come back to you. So if that ever happens, first off, I apologize. But always feel free to follow up with me a second time. But if it wasn't for you guys sending me questions, I wouldn't have my podcast to answer the question. If it wasn't for you guys, why would I be here? I had a boss back in high school. My very first job that I kept was at the library, where my buddy called me Conan the librarian. And I used to complain about the books coming back all the time. Like, oh, so many books to put away. And Thelma, my boss, she said to me, if people didn't have books and didn't take them out, you wouldn't have a job. If you guys didn't send me questions and I didn't have questions to answer, I wouldn't be here. So thank you. Don't ever feel like you're being a bother by sending me questions. I will do my best to answer everything I can until the tidal wave of questions gets so big that I'll figure it out from there, right? But yes, so don't ever feel that way. So back to the second part. The big thing that I heard when you were talking, or when you're writing out the question, was a little bit of analysis paralysis, and that is totally fine. Nobody wants to spend money on something you're worried will be out of date next year. I promise. I don't think that's going to happen, but here's the thing. Any of the brands out there, any of the major brands that you'd recognize, and even some of the smaller ones, I'd even say like Hart brand from Walmart, Bauer brand from Harbor Freight, and of course, Ryobi, they're all great brands that'll be more than sufficient for you as a homeowner. If you're leaning toward Ryobi, I say go for it. Don't get stuck in I don't want to buy something now because it might be obsolete in 3 years. Well, if you do that, you'll never, ever buy anything. The thing is that almost all the brands of tools out there are good. They're going to work for homeowners, and they'll probably work for most handymen too. So don't let yourself get locked into the fact that, they might come out with a new 21.5 volt system and make the 20 volt system obsolete, so I better not buy anything. Don't let yourself do that. Make a decision and go with it. But Ryobi's great. I don't have a lot of Ryobi gear. The only thing I actually have is the power brush for my DeWalt. The Ryobi fits it, works great. But the tool reviewers that I watch and I trust their opinions, They love Ryobi. It is just maybe just a small step down from Milwaukee, DeWalt, Makita. But the thing about Ryobi is they have got such an offering of products just across the board, household stuff, landscaping, lawn care, all of that. So don't ever feel like, you're going to lose out by going with one or the other. The fear of missing out. I do that all the time. I look and I'm like, why didn't I standardize on Milwaukee? Because they get this new 3-foot stick pump that I think is great. So you know what? I know I've always said standardizing on batteries is awesome, but you can always get adapters that will change them, a conversion kit from one to the other. Just snap it on. Other battery goes on. You're good to go. So there's all of that, right? But just don't get stuck in that. Just pick one and go with it. And I would say if you're leaning toward Ryobi, then go for it because you will not be disappointed. Now, do other brands screw over their customers? Yes and no. I would say it's probably not intentionally, but the first thing I'd like to say is DeWalt tried to kill the 18-volt lineup that they had for a long time, and it took them a decade longer than they planned to finally stop putting out tools and batteries for it. So even when they try to kill a brand, if the demand's there, they'll keep making stuff. But I do want companies to innovate all the time. I want them to take the time and try to build new products. But what I want to see them do, hopefully, is like the 60-volt DeWalt Flex Volt line, backwards compatible the batteries are, or the new Power Stack batteries. It's a new technology, but in the same packaging. If they can do that. And the thing is, so many people are just committed to these platforms that, you know what? There is going to come a time when they eventually drop a line or a platform of batteries. But again, analysis paralysis. Don't let yourself fall into it. You're going to get many, many years of good use with these tools. And yes, platforms are going to change, but don't let it get you in the way. Just say, okay, I'm embracing one. I'm going to start with this one. And, I just had a guy the other day, still uses all 18-volt DeWalt batteries. Doesn't know how to use Amazon. So he called me. He said, Tim, can you order me some 18-volt DeWalt batteries on Amazon? Sure. So I got him a couple of the knockoff DeWalt batteries, and they're still just as good. If you want to keep old technology running, there's always going to be ways to do that, solutions for it. But eventually, when they get to their end of life, you're going to want to switch and swap out anyway. So hop on a platform, start with that. And if there's something another company offers that your line doesn't, buy yourself one of those adapters, $20 on eBay or Amazon, and then run them off your batteries. So hopefully that helps, because that is one of those things. I know I still second guess myself sometimes. I'm like, man, maybe I should have went this or that. But you know what? It doesn't matter. Pick one and go with it. Gunner says China knocks off all kinds of things. Gunner also says, I got the Hercules brand drill driver from Harbor Freight. Works well. The previous one lasted me 5 to 6 years. Now that's crazy for that, because am I wrong? Somebody can correct me here, but I think Hercules is a step down from Bauer, isn't it? Or is it the other way around? But either way, that's a Harbor Freight drill that lasted 5 or 6 years. So don't worry about it. Chris Dixon says on the last topic, talking about modern Renaissance man, he said, we all afford ourselves some grace. You're all superhumans, but you're not superhumans. That's a good one, Chris. I like that. Yeah. So remember, afford ourselves some grace. Say, you know what? We're going to fall off the wagon. We're going to get distracted by this shiny thing we want to learn. That's okay. Hop back on and keep going. We need to. Thanks, Chris. I like you sharing that. That was really good. So next, Wilson. Now this one just made me smile. This is not a question. I just had to share it. So a few months ago, I had somebody, well, this Wilson, reached out to me and said, hey, Tim, I need some help knowing where to store my gas. And I think maybe originally he said he wanted to store it in his shed or in his porch because he'd moved to a place where he didn't know where to store it. I ended up suggesting urban camouflage, and it was great. I love urban camouflage. He was very happy with it, but he was a brand new prepper. So I need to shout him out, because the other day he tagged me and Jack Spirko in a post on Float, and it said, goal reached. Just reached my 60 gallons of gas backup thanks to the Jack Spirko method and Toolman Tim's urban camo advice. So first off, fucking right, Wilson. That is awesome. That makes me so happy. I love to see people making gains and doing things because, a few months ago you had one 5-gallon can of gas and now you have 12 5-gallon cans of gas and you came up with a solution. Just kicking ass, Wilson. I am proud of you. Keep going. If you are a new prepper and you want to get started and you think, I don't know where to start, what in the hell do I do? This is what you do. You just start somewhere. They always say the second best time to plant a tree is today. First best was 20 years ago, but doesn't matter. And yeah, it is a USB-C. I think there. Liberty's just asking about the mic. I think my cable's just going bad all around. We'll work on that down the road. So good for you, Wilson. I'm proud of you. Keep going. You have any more questions, man, just send them my way. Always appreciate it. Okay, next one. This was an email from Peter. He said, hey, I remember you doing a bit on storage in a garage, tips for keeping everything organized. I wonder if you have any tips for sorting and organizing old hardware, screws, bolts, nuts, etc. Said a good percentage has rust accumulated, and the idea of sorting through it all, just a bit overwhelming. Said, I kind of doubt I would make use of most of it, and it might just be best to scrap it, or could I find someone that could make use for it? Thanks for any advice. So here we are. The thing is, I tell you a little story. Back in my home hardware days, when I was absolutely broke as a joke, they used to let me, well, when we would clean up, we had these great big revolving nail racks, and we'd take big handfuls, and they'd fall down on the ground. So at the end of the day, we'd sweep them up. They'd all go in a box, and they used to get thrown out. So I would take them with me. They said, take them home, Tim, no problem. And I'd bring home, a pound or two a day of nails. I would sit down in my basement at my workshop bench, put in headphones or turn on the radio, and I would just sort them because to me, spending a couple of bucks on hardware wasn't worth it. I ended up getting these for free and wanted to separate them. So if you do end up wanting to separate them, that's what I always found. Nice flat area, lots of light, sit down, have some good music, just let the time pass. Or a good episode of the Workshop podcast, shameless plug. Joe says you need a bigger garage, keep it dry or recycle. Yeah, that's a good point too, for sure. So if you're going to sort them, wear gloves, especially that old rusty stuff. But how much is your time worth? When it comes down to it, is it worth you even separating them? Because to be honest, if they're old and rusty and you don't think you're going to use them, I would say I don't. Dan says he's trying to work. Stop distracting him. And oh, hey, you know what? I'm going to stop right quick. We got a 808 diffraction says, hello, I'm Ryan. This is my first time here. Great to have you. And he's over on Twitch. It's awesome to have you. Always love to shout out when we get new people here. So is it worth separating all that stuff? I don't know. I probably wouldn't do it at this point. Now, if you want to get rid of it, somebody may want it. Put it on Facebook, Craigslist, but say what it is. It's a bunch of old rusty shit that you're just trying to get rid of. Get rid of it for free. Or maybe just throw it to the landfill. Because think about how many minutes or hours it might take you to separate all that. How much is your time worth? And then go buy the stuff you're actually going to use for a cheap price. Buy it in bulk somewhere and bring it home and then keep it sorted from there. To me, at this point in my life, that's what I would do. A couple more quick things. If you're talking about wood screws and things like that, I love buying those candy dishes. They look like 5-pound candy containers. They have a nice screw-off lid, big wide, so my fatty meat paws can get down in there and reach them out. So I buy them. You pay a little extra for them when you buy them up front, but then I pull the label off and I write the size in black Sharpie. Then I take the empty container back with me, like getting a refill at the coffee shop, but I refill it with screws at the hardware store and then just throw it on their scale. And it's an easy way to pick up 5 pounds of screws. It's easy to handle. And what I love about those is they're completely see-through. So things like when they used the old peanut butter jars, they used to be see-through. Now they're not. I'm not sure why that is. Probably some kind of shrinkflation thing. So they're hard to use now. I need something you can see through because then you don't have to look at labels, flip them around, all of that stuff. And Gunner says, post it on the free section in Craigslist and it'll be gone in 30 minutes flat. Absolutely. People just grab them, pick them up, and they run off with them. And that's fine, whatever. But just try it. But if not, throw them to the landfill. Now, as far as organizing, those candy jars work great for screws. For nuts and bolts, 2 years ago, I had my quad, my four-wheeler died, or the battery came apart, the little connections, and I needed sockets, and I lost the nut and bolt and everything. So I went and grabbed my nice stand-up. So it was a nice stand-up nut and bolt organizer with all the drawers that would just slide out, put it in the back seat of my truck, drove down there because I was in a hurry because it was a blizzard, hit the brakes, every drawer went forward, all the hardware went everywhere. So the big thing I've bought since are those DeWalt flat packs. You can get them for the Milwaukee packouts as well. They work great. But here's the thing. You don't have to standardize. Just buy yourself some organizers. Those are awesome. So I've got all my nuts and bolts in 3 different flat pack storage containers. They have individual size dividers you can take out or put in whatever you need. I've even cut a couple. I made one into a plumbing parts container, and I wanted to have my PEX cutter in there. So I ended up cutting out one of them so it fits down in really nice. But just get yourself one of those. Those flat pack organizers and those candy jars are what I use for almost all my hardware, and it works great. And like I said, when it comes down to it, is it worth your time going through and separating all of that hardware that you're probably not going to use anyway? If it is, go for it. If it isn't, then just take the time, take the money that your time is worth for what time it would have taken to organize the stuff, and go buy the new stuff you're actually going to use. Hope that helps. Here's another one for you. This one is from Josh. He said, "Hey, Tim, longtime listener to the Survival Podcast, and I just started following you on Fountain." Great man. Appreciate it. Oh, Joe says, before we move on, Stanley makes really nice stacking boxes. And yes, they do. Yeah, they're really nice. So Josh says, would you suggest making a maintenance schedule on a monthly basis, i.e. check all your window weather stripping every year in September, all of your AC swamp cooler needs in April, all your compressor generators in March, lawnmowers in May? Said, I'm a list schedule guy, and if I have a list of 1 to 2 projects to take care of every month, I manage that and make sure I have everything serviced at least in that last year. Any ideas would be greatly appreciated. So my answer to that is absolutely yes. I'm a list guy. I'm a schedule guy. It works for me because if I don't put it on paper, I'm sure as shit not going to get it done. I sent him a link, and I will try to throw it in the show notes today. I did a maintenance schedule for the Prepper Broadcast Network for the membership side of things over there. It's 2 or 3 pages long. It was kind of if we end up going into a recession, what are the things I should get done now? But it was also used as a yearly schedule. Now, I work really hard on keeping mine up because I forget things. Like I said, if I don't write them down, I end up losing them. And each year, it's like the first time you go camping and you're like, wow, that was okay, but I needed a bunch of things. So you write all those things down so you remember for the next time you go camping. So the first time you use your maintenance schedule, or the first time you do preventative maintenance around your house, start making a list of the things. Okay, what needs to be done? Well, I need to get all of my vent pipe and everything cleaned out, have all my ductwork clean in, say, September before the furnace starts. I need to get my AC unit serviced in April, that kind of stuff. So yeah, make yourself a list. I find personally monthly works great. Take 1 day a month to do all those maintenance items. If I try to do them weekly, I get overwhelmed and I forget about it. And if I leave them longer than a month, like quarterly, sometimes I kind of forget. So yeah, make yourself a list. I mean, we could all kind of crowdsource something through the Telegram group if you wanted to, but everybody is different. The seasons are the same. Sometimes they start earlier or later, depending on whether you live in Texas or Canada. But make a list of the shit you need to get done, base it seasonally, and then, make a list of 3 or 4 important items each and every month, and then work through them. To me, that works. That has been the best way to build a preparedness schedule. But yeah, we could definitely put one together. But like I said, everybody's is individual, right? I live in town. Lots of people live in the country. But here's the other thing. Don't make it overly complicated. Don't have, 17 items with 18 subheadings under each one. Make it simple. Highlight the important things and then work on those. If you want to add some items as you go along, go for it. But for me, if I make it too complicated, I end up putting it off because there's other things I want to get done. I'm not going to spend my time with that. So I hope that helps. This is a good one. This was a comment from Claiming Liberty over on YouTube. I just wanted to read it to you because it's really good information. But he said, we had a 500-year flood in Columbus, Indiana in 2008. Power and cable were the first services to go. So this was a response to me talking about natural gas being very reliable. He said, but we did lose natural gas the next day because the flooding impacted distribution points. That was the year I actually started thinking more about prepping because I was used to the occasional tornado or ice storm. But the chaos that flood caused was surreal. Regarding heaters, he said, we got a 30,000 BTU Mr. Heater ventless unit that heats the majority of our home. It sits in the front window in our dining room, and we literally drop the propane hose out the front window. Then I put a rigid pipe insulation on the bottom of the window so it can close and leave just enough room for the hose. Said our heater has a thermostat, which I prefer over the heaters like the Big Buddy because we get a lot more mileage out of the propane. The only electricity that's required runs the optional fan. So yeah, like I've mentioned many times, natural gas to me is the most reliable, but there's going to be times when you have earthquakes, nasty floods, and forest fires or wildfires where they're probably going to cut back on the natural gas. And that happens. But overall, it is the most reliable. And this, as far as this conversation goes, it was great because he also went on to mention that they normally say local radio is important. Well, his local radio station was completely cut off from outside communication. He was looking things up on the internet, printing them out, taking them into the radio so they could announce things. So I thought that was pretty cool. It sucked, but he made the best out of his scenario and turned out to be a top-notch prepper, is doing really good with the stuff. But yeah, it does happen. There's going to be occasions when the natural gas will be shut off. So 2 is 1, 1 is none, 3 is a guarantee. You know, that's why I have 60 gallons of gas. I think maybe 5 full 30-pound tanks of propane right now and natural gas, because you need to be able to power your generator, hopefully with multiple sources, or figure something out. Okay, so this next one was really cool. This was about generators. Carrie Craig, she said, I want to play devil's advocate. She said, the old saying is, if it sounds too good to be true, it might be. The price on the Furman generator for its wattage is no less than fantastic compared to other brands. She said, this should maybe be a red flag. How can they give you all this at this price? Use a lot of cap locks here. I like that. She said, I'm aware that some people are overpaying for a brand name. She said, but there is one generator company, this is up here in Canada, called King Canada. They sell high wattage output generators for cheap. They look lovely. They run good initially. And then if you read on the comments and the reviews, durability and quality in the long run don't hold up. She said, I'm just wondering if there's any corners that are cut making these Furman generators and whether it's worth buying a top line generator and so on. She said, I might be wrong, just trying to play devil's advocate here. So here's the thing. The Furmans, the Champions, the Westinghouses, the Duramaxes, they're not a Honda or a Generac. But if you look it up, the average, not the average duration, but the average total power outage hours per year in the United States is 4. So the average amount of power outage you're going to have, so 50% or more of power outage, 50% of power outages are 4 hours or less. Now, you don't necessarily need a big ass Honda or Generac to get through a 4-hour power outage. To be honest, you probably don't need a generator at all. But if you want to buy one, how many years could you run a generator for 4 hours and just run a cheap, inexpensive generator that works good? You know, whether it's a Predator or any of those other brands I listed. I love my Furman. It works great. You know, I have no delusions that it's a Honda or a Generac. You know, I baby it. I take good care of it. I had the King Canada one before. I didn't like it. And we sold a ton of them at Home Hardware, and we had a ton of problems with warranty claims on them. So I would stay away from that brand personally. I hate to say it, but they just aren't that good. But the thing is, look at your generator. What are you using it for? Oh, yeah, I'll bring that one up here. Joe says military surplus non-diesel generators used to be cheap, ... So yeah, what are you using your generator for? And like I said, if it's just a household generator, then yeah, these made in China, although they're all made in China, but any of these middle of the road brands that are inexpensive but decent quality, go with them, because that's all you're going to need. But if you're running a food truck or you're a contractor, something like that, then you're going to need a Honda EU 2000 or something nice like that. So just think about what your use is. And yes, absolutely, these less expensive generators aren't the same quality as the Hondas or the Generacs, but that's okay. There's a place for each of them. It's like the question we talked about earlier with the Ryobi and the Hart tools. Yes, they're less expensive. Yes, their quality might be a little bit less, but if you're only needing them for a couple hours a month, then you're all set. So hopefully that clarifies just a bit. You know, I love those middle of the road generators because they are the sweet spot of quality, runtime, and cost. But again, don't go and buy it if you're going to be running it 18 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3 years, because it's not going to hold up. Next one was from UTR on YouTube. I'm not sure that that's just the name, but they wanted to know, there was a video of me putting seafoam in one of my generators, and again, wanted to know why that was. And if you're new here, you might not have heard me say, but I think seafoam is like magic in a can. There's so many benefits. I try to buy 3 or 4 cans of it every time it comes on sale. I really should buy a full case, but it's not the cheapest stuff in the world. But it's a fuel stabilizer, it's a carb cleaner, it's an engine lubricant. So if you've put something aside, like even like a generator, if it's set for 2 or 3 months, you're ready to start it up again, put a couple of highly scientific measurements of 2 or 3 glugs into the gas can and then run it. You're going to see that white smoke come out. It's going to break up all the carbon deposits in the carburetor, clean it out, and it's going to run like a dream. It's going to stabilize the fuel that's in there. It's going to help it burn a little bit better, and it's just going to help the engine run better. But it is absolutely the cat's ass. If you don't use seafoam, well, you should, especially if you have a lot of 2-stroke engines or 4-stroke stuff that goes away for the season, and then you have to bring it out, or things that sit for a long time. I love seafoam. Now, my go-to fuel stabilizer, though, is PRI-G. That is the best on the market. But if you have stuff that needs carburetor cleaned out quite often, or it's running a little sluggish, throw some seafoam in it. It will fix it. All right, so the last thing I wanted to do today, guys, this one's going to be kind of fun. If you've been following me over on Fountain, I really love the Fountain app. You know, they're working through some bugs over there. It's been my go-to. I enjoy it. It runs on the Podcast 2.0 kind of platform. It has a Lightning wallet built in, so you can tip creators, and creators can do promotions. And anyway, so far, I really love the interface. And I think my favorite thing is what they call boostagrams, where you guys can send messages to me based on whatever you just listened to. I haven't had a platform yet where I could do that. I'm sure it exists somewhere else, but it's really cool. So I wanted to share with you, I think I picked 7 that I've gotten this month of the top boostagrams from you guys. And I just wanted to share them, give you guys some shout outs. So the first one was from Lord Daver 65729. Some of these names are like some of the early YouTube names. They're really funny. But he said, I want to let you know, Tim, that I love the podcast, trying to follow you on Fountain. Also, I'm a U.S. citizen, but have been given honorary Canadianship by some of my friends in Toronto, given that I have a love for poutine, ketchup chips, and pierogies. All 3 are absolute. This is my added on here, but ketchup chips, pierogies, and poutine are all Canadian staples up here. If you don't know what any of them are, look them up. They're great. But I appreciate it, Lord Daver. I love this, being able to interact and get messages from different people from different platforms, and I will always respond to you. Next one was Zordon, Zordon. Said, Tim asked, this one was probably my favorite. Tim asked what to call the blue Lowe's bucket. So if you guys remember back a couple of months ago, I did the 88 reasons to love the 5-gallon bucket. And he said, Tim asked what to call the blue Lowe's buckets. And the Home Depot ones are called Homers. So continuing the Simpson theme, he said, I think we should call the Lowe's bucket a Marge. Thanks again for all the work you do. Well, I think that's great, because Marge has blue hair. The buckets are blue. That works for me. So from now on, the Lowe's buckets will be called Marges, or Marge. Joel says, milk crates make a great bucket for hockey pucks and water bottles. I did an episode on milk crates, and I thought this was a good little tip, because I don't know how I missed it. Every single time you go into a hockey arena up here, there's always a milk crate of hockey pucks and a milk crate of Gatorade water bottles sitting around. So think outside the box, use them for what you need to, but I thought that was pretty good. This one came from Jed. He said, use 1,000,000,001 for milk crates, a hen excluder. This is a pretty funny story. Said, I was collecting some squash in my milk crate when I witnessed my brand new chicks being picked on by a recently broody hen and her brood of younglings. Without thinking about it, I dumped my squash on the ground and put the crate right over top, open end down, and put it right over top the baby chicks. And they were safe. It was a way to keep them away from this nasty, mean old hen. I thought, hey, that was pretty cool. Neat little picture out there, collecting up squash, and ended up, helping out the little babies, because you had this bitchy old hen there. Next one is Left Seat Life. Said, I mounted one of the antique wood and steel milk crates on its side at the end of one of my upper cabinets to make a cool rustic wine rack. And if you guys haven't looked up those old wood milk crates, they are sharp looking. I love them. But yeah, that would be a beautiful wine rack. O-Towner 98 says, eaves trough is the only way to go. North Central Illinois is all I ever knew. You guys know I get my balls busted quite often from users who say, what in the hell are eaves troughs? Those are called gutters up here. So it was good to know that somebody in Illinois has my back. And finally, Jordan Richner says, Tim, I'll echo the recommendations on Milwaukee pack outs. And don't worry, DeWalt tools can be carried in Milwaukee boxes. I do it every single day. I had to appreciate that because, yes, I'm definitely going to go with the Milwaukee pack out system. It's something that I've been wanting for a while. And I'm going to the city this weekend, and I'm going to be going to Home Depot. And if they're on sale, maybe I'll just come home with a set. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It's a little bit shorter. Sorry about the technical difficulties in the middle there. I'll edit that out on the podcast. At least I'm pretty sure I will on the audio end of things. But thanks for sticking with me, guys. I don't think anybody dropped off. You get to sit there and watch me wear my headphones and whatever. But either way, thank you, guys. I appreciate your support. This was a fun episode. I always love doing Q&A sessions. So if you guys got some, keep sending them. There's a form on the website you can fill out. You can email me at therealtimcook@gmail.com, and you can hit me up on every single social platform or send me a boostagram, and I will respond to it. We'll use it for content here, and I'll definitely get back to you. Now, remember, no live stream this Saturday, and that's totally fine. I'm going to take the weekend off and go with the kids, but there will be a second half of the John Willis interview on the podcast stream, so you won't be totally without content. And then Sunday, same bat time, same bat channel, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. I got Joel from Fortress K9 coming on, and we're going to chat all about dogs. So, guys, make it a great weekend because this is the last weekend up here before the kids go back to school. So do something with your family, get some shit done, and get out there. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week and a great weekend.